Hi, welcome to Lights Camera Author. I'm Jim Juno. And on August 16th, 1977, the world was shocked by this news.
Good evening. Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently, it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing. His road manager tried to revive him. He failed. A hospital tried to revive him. It failed. His doctor pronounced him dead at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Shelly Powers has a new book out. It's called Elvis Remembered. And these are intimate stories from people who actually knew the great entertainer. So, Shelly, welcome to Lights Camera Author.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. It's going to
Oh,
be very
thank you for
exciting
being
talking about
thank you
all.
for being here.
Yeah, my
Now,
pleasure.
tell me, how did you get to be an Elvis fan? Because let's face it now, his career started in 1955, basic or 54, whatever. That is almost 70 years ago, and I can tell by your video you're nowhere near my age. So
You know what? I'm not going to tell you my age, but I think most people know anyway. Age is just a number, Jim. So I'm sure you've heard that before. But no, it all stems back really to my parents, as I mentioned in my book. My mom was a huge Elvis fan, and when Elvis used to appear on the television, she would just go into this like dreamlike state. And the same with my dad. He used to sing Elvis songs in the bathroom, but he brought home an old record player and an Elvis vinyl. So Elvis got played in the house, and I was just completely hooked at the age of 7 years old, and my brothers too. So we were all Elvis fans. So I was practically raised on Elvis. My nan, and my great grand, we all lived in one little house in northern England. And later on in life, if an Elvis record came on, particularly one of my favorites, American Trilogy, we had to just sit in silence while it played out. She just loved that song. So there were, all through his career, Elvis was a big part of our lives. So right from being very little. So that's how it all started.
well, and you, if I remember correctly, you even married an Elvis tribute artist. I'm not going to say Elvis impersonator because that's not what they're known as. They're known as Elvis tribute artists.
Okay, yes, I did. Next, I
But you
did.
actually,
Yes, go
now,
ahead.
your first, well, let's talk about the book here, Elvis
Okay.
Remembered. Now,
Mhm.
and it's published by Firefly Books, and it came out on September 30th. So if you're interested, you can go to Amazon, you can go to bn.com or amazon.co.uk in the UK, because you're coming to us from, as we will say, across the pond.
That's right. That's right. You're stateside.
Yes. Now, your first interview was with Ed Bonja. And for those of you who do not know who Ed Bonja was, well, first off, all the interviews are
Mhm.
with people who knew Elvis intimately, very close to him. Ed Bonja was his personal photographer
That's
for
right.
almost his entire career, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ed was, Ed was a very shy person. He didn't really spend a lot, even though he photographed Elvis throughout his career from up till the 70s. He kind of took a step back. He wasn't, he didn't like to intrude on Elvis. And in the book, it also mentions a certain picture of Elvis where he went to take a photo, and Elvis kind of stood there and waited and said, what are you doing? Take the picture. He always felt like he was intruding, but after that happened, he kind of came out of his shell a bit. But he got that position because of Tom Parker, because Tom Parker was Ed's uncle, if you like, not real uncle, but he used to call him uncle, and his wife was called Aunt. And Ed was a really lovely guy, and he didn't get the recognition I think that he deserved, and that was because of Colonel Tom Parker. So, but yeah, I met Ed. I used to go to these Elvis conventions in Vegas because I was part of an Elvis fan club, Elvis International. And the president had said to me, you know, Shelley, since you're out and about and you go to these Elvis conventions, what have you, do you think you could get some interviews? And I hadn't really thought about it, but then I think, you know what, this might actually be good for the fan club. So I used to go and I talked to some of the people like Cynthia, Ed, Darlene Tompkins, and I asked Ed, I said, would you be prepared to sit and talk to me about your experiences with Elvis all the time that you had? And he agreed. So it kind of went on from there. You know, Ed was the very first interview, and it went so well. It was really well received that the others just kind of followed, and it went on from there. But yeah, he was lovely. He was really nice, and I feel really sad when I think of Ed because you know, if you read in the book, he got roped into the Colonel's gambling habits. And I remember him telling me that on the last night that he walked out, that Ed walked out, he'd lost, I think it was $12,000 at a roulette table, and he was
Amazing.
broke and depressed, and that was the end of his career with Elvis. But an amazing photographer, a brilliant man, such a nice guy, such a
You know,
nice, modest too. His images, the pictures he took are fantastic. But he
yeah,
was
there was
modest.
one picture, and you probably know about this already, but for those of you who don't, there was a picture, and it's in the beginning of the book where it's a 1968 comeback special.
Mm,
Elvis is in his iconic leather outfit, and in the audience, in the lower left-hand corner, there is a girl or a woman
mm.
in yellow there. Do you know the lady the person that I'm talking about? She's wearing yellow. She's got a yellow ribbon in her hair.
Right. I guess I
Yeah,
can recall that picture.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a young Cheryl Ladd.
Oh my goodness. And wasn't she
Yes, yes,
Charlie Angels?
yes.
I,
She was in the front row,
oh wow.
and
Gosh. Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing. Wow. Because
and
I know Patty Parry was there as well. Patty's
yeah.
seated at front. Because that night Elvis he was very nervous. And you know, I think it was Joe Esposito, or might have been the Colonel said, you know, go sit in it at the front near Elvis because he's very nervous. So yeah, no, that's amazing. Wow, I
Yeah,
didn't
and
know that.
yeah, this was before she became an actress, I believe. And so, but yeah, she was. I found that out by looking at the Internet Movie Database. I was like, oh yeah, that's that woman. Okay. Um,
Yeah,
Now, Pat, you mentioned Patty Perry. She was the only, like you say, the only female member of the Memphis Mafia,
that's right. Yeah. Patty,
and
goodness. Go
and
ahead.
they I think she met Elvis. Forgive me if I misstate, but it was Red West who introduced her to Elvis.
No, no, it didn't happen like that. So, do you mean how she actually first met Elvis?
Yes, uh-huh.
No, she met Elvis by chance when she was 17 years old. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and she was driving along with her friend. And then this limousine pulls up, and she looks in it and says, hey, there's Elvis Presley. And let's pretend we don't know who he is. And so, you know, they joked and he said, you know, pull over. And that was it. That was the first meeting with Elvis. And from then on, they became friends. He invited her over to the house. She went over and they were friends for 17 years. Well, she met him when she was 17. But yeah, Patty was fiercely protective of Elvis. You know, she was a force to be reckoned with, and one of his true friends, I would say. But an amazing lady, fantastic. In fact, I would say her interview was probably one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. I mean, she was brilliant. You know, you didn't mess around with Patty. She had no filter, you know, she told it how it was. Very funny, but you didn't, like I say, you know, you didn't want to get on the wrong side of Patty either. She was certainly had a big personality and
Seemed like
loved
a,
Elvis.
it
Loved
seemed
Elvis.
like the entire group known as Memphis Mafia, they were fiercely, they were all fiercely protective of Elvis.
They were, they were definitely. It was like a circle of trust, if you like. It was, you know, when you didn't break that trust, you know what went. I mean, these guys spent every single day with Elvis. You know, they went everywhere with him, and so you know, it was very private. What went on in that circle was very private, and you know, they all respected that. You know, they were like a family, if you like. And well, you know, we know that trust was broken, unfortunately. But then, as Patty told me during the interview, Elvis would have forgiven, and she was talking to Charlie Hodge at the time. Elvis would have forgiven the people that were responsible for what happened. Um, and he said, yeah, but you know what? Elvis would not have forgotten. So, but
See,
we could
that's
go over that when we talk about the other people, the other members of the Memphis Mafia. But yeah, as I say, it was like one big family, and wherever Elvis was, they were. You know, Patty was very independent. So she had her own job. She was a hairdresser. And in the book, it says how, you know, Elvis tried to pay her for cutting her hair. And she said, you know what? I don't want your money. You know, you're really good to me. You give me gifts. You know, you look after me. I'm not going to take your money. And she didn't. She could have written a book. She, you know, she had so many stories to tell, but, you know, she was just loved Elvis, loved being with him. After work, she would drive over. The guys there would, Elvis would make sure that she was, you know, had a ride home, that she got home safely. Um, yeah, Elvis was a big part of Patty's life, and she missed him every single day. Every single day. There was some funny things actually that when I think about the interview with Patty, and you know, she'd say she had this gravelly voice, and so she goes, anybody that messes with Elvis, you know, I'll take their ass down. And I'll take them out. And she was telling me about this monkey. Elvis, you know, Elvis had a pet monkey, and this is in the book. And I don't know if he trained this monkey to do things, but this monkey would go over to the girls, and he'd run over and he'd pull their skirts up and stuff like this. And so Patty was telling about this one particular time when this monkey came running towards her. So she pulled her fist back and she punched that monkey, and he went flying back. And she said Elvis laughed for about half an hour, and he just, when he laughed, he laughed. She said it was the funniest thing. But she was tough. Patty was tough, and she had to be, because she, you know, she grew up with these surrounded by guys, and she had to become one of the guys. So, but big personality. I loved Patty.
was it Patty who said that that if Linda, not Linda, but Ginger Alden,
Oh yeah,
that if Linda Thompson was still his girlfriend,
yes,
he'd still be alive. Was that
yeah.
her?
That was Patty that said that. I brought up during the interview. I did bring up Ginger Alden, and she would not acknowledge her. It was like, who?
Oh.
I said, you know, Ginger, who? And yeah, no, she said, I don't know her. I don't care about her. I don't want to talk about her. Patty's take on it was that if Elvis had been, if she hadn't been with Ginger, then he would still be alive. I'm just telling you what those Patty's thoughts. Linda, as we know, was a lovely girlfriend. She looked after Elvis. She really genuinely cared about him. And, you know, she was friends with Patty. Patty spoke very highly of Linda. But when it comes to Ginger,
Yeah.
didn't want to talk about her. no. And I mean, I don't know. From clippings that I've seen, my opinion is that she was there for the ride. She was there to get on board, and it was Elvis. And I don't think there was that genuine love. That's what I feel from what I've learned from other people.
We're talking about Ginger Alden there.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm. You know, the several people, several people you've talked to have since left us. Also, they've also passed away,
Mhm.
and it's sad because but it's a passage of time. It's hard to believe it. It's going to be it's already 56 years, or 46 years rather, 46 years since Elvis Presley died. Um, are you surprised that he has survived, his legacy has survived this long?
Not at all. No, no, not at all. And and I think it will continue. I think his legacy will live on and on, way past us. This film that came out about Elvis, that really helped as well, because there are new fans, younger fans. So yeah, he Elvis Presley was a very special, unique person. And as Cynthia Pepper said, he was put on this earth for a reason. There is nobody like Elvis. And he had everything, he had it all. But the thing that I found out through these interviews about Elvis was that he always questioned why him? Why was he, why did people love him so much? Would they still remember him after he was gone? And he stood the test of time. It's incredible. It's incredible that he's. But if you look at him and you compare him to people of today, there is nobody that compares to Elvis. He did gospel, rock and roll. He could sing soprano. His voice, the range, his charisma when he was on stage. And yet he had this modesty about him as well. Um, he was just an incredible human being. And no, it doesn't surprise me one bit. No.
No. Although I wasn't around for the initial Elvis mania, so to speak, back in
Mhm.
the 50s,
Yeah.
the closest thing that I can compare it to modern day would probably be Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Uh, because
Okay.
every move that he made from his beginning of his career back in the 50s up until his death in 1977,
Yeah.
he couldn't go places
No, he
like you and I go. And it's just because a crowd of people would show up. And it's like Taylor Swift. I mean, if she goes out to eat and the word gets out, or to American football game, all of a sudden,
yeah,
here's how to prepare for Taylor Swift.
I know.
um,
I know.
so I see a parallel there.
And it's true, like, I mean, I'm sure she can relate to this. Elvis Presley was a prisoner of his own fame. He couldn't go everything. They had to shut the theaters. If you want to go see a movie, it had to be when it was all closed up. He couldn't go anywhere. They went from, as Patty was telling me, they went from the show to the suite, to the show, back to the suite. Everything happened. The parties happened in the suites. That's where all the fun was. Because, like you and I, we can walk down the street and we're fine. From very early, he went from being a truck driver to an overnight success. And he really did care about what his fans thought. He genuinely loved his fans. He appreciated them. He knew that if it wasn't for them, he wouldn't be wearing the clothes. He wouldn't be that he was wearing. He wouldn't be where he was. There was a part in the book. I can't remember who was it. I think it might be Larry Gell, actually, that told me they were thinking about putting the price of the tickets up, and Elvis said, "No, we're not doing that to my fans." He didn't. He really did love his fans and appreciate them, and had plenty of time for them as well. So
Let, let me ask you real quick. So many things have been written about Elvis Presley,
yeah,
and I'm just wondering, now you interviewed a lot of the people who were closest to him. You mentioned um, Sonny West. You mentioned that you weren't sure how to approach him.
right.
Unfortunately, he's passed away also now, um, because he and Red West and another person of the Memphis Mafia, close members, wrote a book when Elvis was alive the last month.
Yeah,
Excuse me 1 second. Yeah, and what happened is that you weren't sure how to approach him. What would it be? So, but it turned out that he didn't regret the book, but he also didn't feel it accurate.
right. With Sonny, it's a really tricky one. It was a tricky one because when you meet Sonny West, you can't help but like him. You know, he was very likable. He's like a big old teddy bear. That's my opinion when I met Sonny. He was lovely. Um, and I genuinely believe Sonny really did love Elvis. You know, they go way back to when they used to go to the ice rinks together. And, Sonny was his bodyguard, but he was his friend. And they spent a lot of time together. And yeah, they had disagreements, what have you. Um, but yeah, right. I wasn't sure how I was going to approach this and this subject. But I can tell you that interviewing Sonny, I felt he was full of remorse. He did not want that to be his legacy. That he did not want that to be the end of his relationship, what he thought about Elvis Presley. So he also wrote another book. Um, did he do it out of spite, because he was fired along with a few of the others? I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I think everybody did try to help Elvis with his addiction. Um, but I think that probably they were very, very bitter, yeah, that they had been let go after having this relationship, this long-term relationship with Elvis, and then suddenly Vernon had to tell them, "Listen, you're out of here." Um, but I think also that it was blown up a little bit. I think that I can't remember now the guy that actually took over the book and said we're going to do this and do that with it. But I think it was more of they didn't realize it was going to be such a scandal, or so I was led to believe during the interview.
Mm.
It was a tell-all book. It was a horrible book, and I don't really like talking about it. I haven't even read it, and I don't want to read it. But I do know that, from what I've learned, that Elvis was very worried about this book, and the timing was terrible because
Yeah,
he passed shortly afterwards. And during the interview with Patty, yeah, she did lean in and whisper that she thought that book had a lot to do with his
and
passing. Elvis was very poorly in the end as well. We have to remember he was of really ill health. But I think the stress of knowing that this book was going to come out, um, and had been written by people that he trusted, was just probably too much for him to handle.
yeah,
I'm not saying that
yeah.
killed Elvis. What I'm saying is it didn't help him. It didn't help his state of mind. And
You go ahead.
getting back to Sonny, when I interviewed Sonny, I found him to be a very warm, um, kind person who spoke very highly of Elvis. Every time I've met him, when I met Sonny's wife after Elvis had died, she said that she lost her husband for over a year. I think it really affected him, and I think there was a lot of guilt there as well. Definitely, you can hear it. in the words, his demeanor, everything. I think he did. He says that he didn't regret writing that book, but I think he did. I could tell.
One of the people you talked to, and this is something which I, as we mentioned in the pre-interview, I had a personal connection to Larry Geller, who
Yeah,
was Elvis's spirit, I want to say spiritual advisor
yeah,
and
yeah.
his hairdresser.
Hairdresser.
Um, and Larry Geller has relayed rather this story several times about how Elvis was in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where I'm from originally, and he was not in the best of shape for a
No.
concert that he was going to give that night. Elvis Presley wasn't.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, he was, and I know the place where it happened. It was called the Executive Inn, because the way it was laid out, like I told you, it was the airport, Executive Inn, and then the venue, which was known as Freedom Hall at the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center. So this happened at the Executive Inn because that's where Elvis would always stay. And what happened is that he was in bed. He was sick as a dog.
Yeah.
Um, he was being put under. His head was being dunked in water just to keep him conscious. And Larry Geller came in and said, Colonel Parker said, the only thing that matters is that that man is on stage tonight. Um,
That was no
and
exaggeration.
Larry still seems to be blaming himself a little bit, doesn't he?
Larry blames himself for
A
that.
little bit. It came across that he blamed himself for not being more forceful with Colonel Parker.
You know, from talking to the people that I interviewed, you couldn't be forceful with Tom Parker. He was a big personality, and he was tough and relentless. But then some people say that he was brilliant. He was brilliant, a brilliant manager, you know. Um, but yeah, Colonel Tom Parker, as we all know, had this huge gambling habit. I think myself, what I've learned in the early days, he probably was good for Elvis, you know, and I believe that Elvis would have been massive anyway, you know, even without Tom Parker. I mean, before Tom Parker had come and discovered Elvis, he was already on his way. But you know, Tom Parker got him the contacts, got him the gigs, kind of held him back a little bit, you know, wanted people wanting more. So he was brilliant at that. And so yeah, in some ways he was very good for Elvis. But I think when it came to Vegas, the Vegas years, the reason why Tom Parker, as Ed Bonja said, wanted to be in Vegas because he had this huge gambling habit anyway. And you know that film that Baz did, you know, it was spot on. It was amazing. It was outrageous how he deceived Elvis, if you like. And you know, he would go and Ed told me he would go and he would sit at a roulette table and would gamble $2 million a night.
Yeah.
$2 million a night. It's incredible.
Yeah,
And Elvis fed his gambling habit. You know, he used him as a cash cow, and I that is it. That is it in a nutshell. Um, and it's tragic. And no, and Larry, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, Jerry Schilling, tried to help Elvis in the way that you know he wanted him to go on tour in Europe. And
yeah.
you know, he'd have arguments with Colonel. I mean, good for Jerry for trying to stand up to the Colonel, but the Colonel was a tough character and ruthless.
That's what a lot of people don't realize is that yeah, he was a ruthless individual. I'll be kind and say individual, you know, because like you said, yes, for at the beginning of Elvis's career, yeah, he got him on TV. He got him the RCA contract. He got, you know, he basically got him in front of people.
Yeah, he did.
Um, yeah,
But he
but
made
later,
bad
yeah,
decisions as well for Elvis, you know. I mean, you know, Elvis wanted to do that movie with Barbara Streisand, A Star Is Born,
A
you know,
Star Is
but
Born.
the Colonel wanted him to headline, as we all know, and that didn't happen. There was other things that Elvis could have done that he wanted to do. He was brilliant. He was so way ahead of his time, as Patty Parry had said, and Jerry Schilling. This man could have done anything. He was going to be doing he started a project about a karate movie, a documentary, and there were so many things that he could have done, but it's also he was held back, that he was controlled. And I feel through interviewing these people, I learned that he wasn't allowed to do everything he wanted to do. I think he was, as much as he loved going on stage, and he loved performing. He couldn't wait after those movies. He couldn't wait to get back on stage. But I feel that he was bored and he wanted to get out there and go to Europe. He had fans all over the world, but obviously, like in the movie, he was spot on. He was held back. He wasn't allowed to do the things that he wanted to do, and he was capable of anything. And I just think in the end, it's heartbreaking. I think he almost gave up and succumbed to the wishes of Tom Parker, and
Yeah.
just he was lost, and
Yeah.
I think he was quite lonely as well towards the end. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Shelly Powers is the author, and the book is Elvis Remembered. It, like we said, is from Firefly Books, and it's out now. Um, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk in the UK, BN.com. You can find it anywhere. Go to your brick and mortar store and have them order it. Shelly, thank you for being on Lights Camera Author today.
It's been lovely talking to you. And before I go, I want to say that we have talked about some of the negative aspects of what happened in Elvis's life, but the thing is, there is so much love that was shared in this book as well. Everybody that I interviewed just absolutely adored this guy. He was humble, he was modest, he was brilliant, and we had so much fun. Like with Myrna Smith, I sat on her bed and interviewed her. Cynthia Pepper, Darlene Tompkins, Joe Esposito, they all had so many amazing things to say about Elvis. It is sad. It's sad, the ending. Obviously, it's awful, and that's not how we want to remember him. We want to keep his memory alive through how brilliant he was. And Elvis did spend a lot of time laughing. He was a very happy person. So, I don't want to end this on a negative note. He was,
Perfectly understandable. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But it's a beautiful book, and I really hope that the readers enjoy it as much as I did interviewing these people. I was so privileged, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Well, I hope to have you back.
Yes, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you again, Jim. And have you read the book in
Yes,
its
I
entirety?
have. I
So,
read it last night. Yes.
okay, okay. So did you like the best? Which one
when,
really got to you?
when he bought the woman the Cadillac, the woman who was outside the car dealership,
Window, yeah.
and he came out and said, "Do you like the car?" And she goes, "That's a beautiful car." But I could never afford this. So he goes back in and tells the dealer, "Give her the keys." He
Yeah.
bought the car for her.
That's an example of his generosity. And that's the one thing as well that everybody, says about Elvis. They all said the same thing. Because Elvis came from nothing. He had nothing, as we all know. And he loved to give. He loved to see the expressions on people's faces when he gave them something. If he went shopping for himself, everybody else would get something. He'd put his hands behind his back and say, pick a hand, and there might be like a diamond ring there or a bracelet or something. He just loved to give, and that's who Elvis was. He got joy from making other people happy. he was something else. He was kind and just a beautiful man, an absolutely beautiful man, inside and out. And
Well,
everybody that I spoke to has agreed that they were privileged to have this person and to be in his life in some small capacity, whatever way. They were very, very lucky.
well, Shelly, again, thank you for being on Lights Camera Author.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed it.